Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for the Tech Guy is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. This is the Tech Guy podcast. These shows originally aired on the 4th of July weekend, July 3rd and 4th, 2010, on the Premier Radio Networks. These are episodes 679 and 680. Enjoy. Well, a good day to you. How are you today? Leo Laporte here, the Tech Guy. And it's time to talk about tech. What a surprise. Well, it could be the tech guy talking about gardening, but the tech of gardening, as interesting as that is, probably wouldn't merit an entire program based on it. How are you, everybody? This is going to be fun today. Today, I am going to finally explain in clear, plain English what the heck is going on with the iPhone 4. You will understand. By the time I am through today, you will understand what happened. Why Apple's response is a bunch of horse pucky. And what we all can do about it. I know some of you probably don't care. If you don't have an iPhone 4, you don't care. Although, if you're one of those people who is an iPhone hater, you might care. If you have an iPhone 4, you definitely care. The iPhone 4, the hottest geek object of desire that came out a week ago, has a little problem. When they built it, and Apple, by the way, made a big deal about this. They built it with the antenna in the stainless steel rim. It's really kind of a work of art. It's a beautiful phone. And so the deal is that you have glass in the front and glass in the back. And it's bound together by a border of stainless steel, of metal, going all the way around the edge. And very cleverly, Apple, in fact, they touted this when they announced the phone in their design, made this antenna, this stainless steel edge, rather, the antenna to the whole kit and caboodle. And they said, the best antenna we've ever done. The best design we've ever done. It is certainly a beautiful design. I have to say, I have an iPhone 4 in my hot little hands right now, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's a little strange to put glass on the front and the back. I mean, it's a little bit maybe fragile. They say, oh, no, this is Gorilla Glass. You can't break it. Except that, of course, the first thing that happened is the folks at iFixit, when they got an iPhone, dropped it 3 times. And, well, guess what? It broke. Well, it's made of glass, Gorilla or not. But it's beautiful. I mean, I think they really did a nice job. This is the iPhone 4. It's gorgeous. But there's, and I think they made a big deal over the fact that it was, the best antenna ever. And this metal band. But there's a little minor, small problem. Small problem. If you hold the phone with your hand and you accidentally cover, there's a little plastic insulator between the 3G and Wi-Fi antenna at the top and the phone antenna, the cell phone antenna on the bottom. This little plastic insulator. If you accidentally hold your hand over it and short it, you will go from 5 solid bars of AT&T reception down to none within about 30 seconds. It just happens. The sad thing is this is exactly the normal way to hold the phone. This is how you... Oh, it went up. Oh, I was just doing it and went up 1. Wow. Oh, maybe they did fix it. Look at that. It's coming back. It's a miracle. Wow. Let me try that again. It was going down and it went back. So Apple, for a while denied it. Steve Jobs. We think it's Steve. We don't know if it's Steve. People claim it's Steve when these emails go out. In fact, there was a recent exchange which definitely wasn't Steve. It was faked. In fact, the way you know it is because the guy who had the exchange went around to the various gadget blogs and tried to sell it. That's kind of a dead giveaway, isn't it? Somebody's selling his emails from Steve Jobs. I mean, sleazy, yes. But Steve did write an email, which I think is credible, to somebody saying, well, hold it different. My friend Chris DeBona, who works at Google, said, it's interesting how Apple in 10 years has gone from think different to hold different. Oh, just hold it different. That'll fix it. But the fact was that, you know, this was a demonstrable thing that happened. You'd hold the phone and it'd go from 5 bars to no bars in about a minute just by holding it. Now, I brought it in to the AT&T store, and I said, what the heck? And they said, well, let me ask you a question. Have you had more dropped calls? And I said, well, I don't really know because I hardly use the phone as a phone. This is probably true of a lot of iPhone users. We really use it as a little computer in our pocket, don't we? But people are complaining still about the dropped calls. I'll tell you what. I immediately took it home. I said, all right, let me see. And I made a call to myself at home. By the way, I know I have a fairly weak signal at home. Made the call. And then I held the phone, and I watched the bars down go to 0. And you know what? I'll be darned if it's not true. The phone did not drop. It did not drop. I did see an appreciable lack of signal, but the phone did not drop. And this is what Apple's been saying is, well, it's a better antenna. It's a better antenna. It'll work better. And remember, these are digital calls. So if you get a little bit of signal, enough, it'll either work or it won't work. It doesn't degrade. It either works or it doesn't work. And there's been a lot of debate over whether this drop in signal, which you can absolutely see on the screen, is a symptom of or related to dropped calls, or if it's just, yeah, there's definitely some attenuation. John Gruber, who writes a very good Apple blog, daringfireball.net, did some bandwidth tests and was able to show that when he had his hand over that plastic, it reduced the bandwidth of the iPhone by about 50% on 3G downloads, but it still was better than any iPhone previous. And this is kind of what Apple's been saying. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's much better. The phone is much better than it's ever been before. And yes, we have this problem, but it's still better than it's ever been before. When I went into the AT&T store, I said, look, I want to get a case. I don't want to get a case on this lovely phone, but I think I have to get a case. And the case, in fact, does prevent this dropping. It's just when your wet, sweaty palms hit the side of the phone that it causes a problem. So the case insulates that and protects it. And it still gets a good signal. And no, I've been trying to drop the calls, and I haven't been able to drop the calls. An RF engineer at the AntennaSys blog, AntennaSys.com, I think it is, wrote a very good article on the first day saying, you know what, this is normal. He says, ever since people stopped putting antennas, extensible antennas on the phone, which they used to do, those antennas that you would extend. He said, you could do that with those antennas, by the way. You could grasp them, it would attenuate, and you'd lose the signal. So he said, it's always been that way. He said, ever since the phone companies realized you didn't want antennas because they broke off and started building them in the phone, all phones have had a problem of this sort in some way or another. There is always a way to hold the phone that attenuates the antenna because you're blocking the signal. He said, I love this, when Motorola first started making the StarTAC, I think it was the StarTAC phones, they had antennas, but people so seldom extended them that they put 2 antennas in. One that would be an internal antenna when you didn't extend the phone, and one that would work when you extended the antenna. He said and ever since, people have really been eliminating antennas, and Apple's doing what everybody else is doing. When we found this problem on the iPhone, by the way, we went and my buddy Ken's Palm Pre tried it with that same thing happen. People claim the same thing's been happening with the 3G. So it really does look like, yes, there's a problem. It does drop the signal, but it doesn't necessarily kill your calls unless you're in a really marginal area. Then Apple puts out a press release yesterday that really, I think, missed the point entirely. Apple said, well, basically what I've just said. And they said, we're going to fix this with a software fix. We're going to change how the bars work. Oh, dear. That was kind of a mistake. That's the cosmetic fix. The bars, they said, we're going to start using AT&T's new recent formula for calculating the bars. And what you'll see is that it won't go down anymore because the bars will more accurately reflect the reception. Apple said, we have discovered, this is a quote, the cause of this dramatic drop in bars, and it is both simple and surprising. Upon investigation, we were stunned. Okay, this is bad language, Apple. To find that the formula we use to calculate how many bars of signal strength to display is totally wrong. Our formula in many instances mistakenly displays 2 more bars than it should for a given signal strength. In other words, Apple, I mean, let's face it, Apple knew this. Apple's been lying about signal strength all along to make it look like the phone was better than it was. Now they're getting bit by it. For example, we sometimes display 4 bars when we should be displaying as few as 2. Users observing a drop of several bars when they grip the iPhone in a certain way are most likely in an area with very weak signal strength. Gee, that seems like everywhere. AT&T everywhere. But they don't know it because we are erroneously displaying 4 or 5 bars. In other words, you're just seeing the true bars when you put your hand on the phone in that certain way. It's the way we should have done it. The big drop in bars is because the high bars were never real in the first place. So now Apple's saying, yeah, we lied. We made it look better than it was. Now you're seeing the truth. Could this mess get any worse? We'll talk a little more in just a bit, and then take your calls. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Leo Laporte, the tech guy, 8888 Ask Leo. That's my phone number if you have a question, a comment, a suggestion. We're talking about the iPhone. And by the way, I am currently using an iPhone 4, and I do like it for a lot of reasons. I'm also looking at my Nexus 1 Android phone and feeling a little disloyal. It's tough these days. They keep pulling me in. We're talking about the Apple response. Clearly a poorly crafted press release, which sounds like it's admitting, well, we've been calculating the bars wrong all along to make it look better than it was. I guess the question is, should you pay any attention to the bars on your phone, since apparently they have nothing to do with your ability to make and receive a call? And if they mean nothing, why do they put them on there? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 8888 Ask Leo. We were talking to Clint in Chicago. He's a very, very patient fellow, Clint. I am not going to ask you about your phone anymore.
Well, thank you, sir.
It's your turn.
My question is to you, Leo. I am taking some advice I've heard, or an idea that I've heard you mention a few times.
Okay.
My Dish Network service has just completely annoyed me. And this week I pretty much told them where they can go, had them disconnect my service. So now, Leo, I'm looking to pretty much use only my computer as a means of entertainment, and of course the channels that come in locally. So I had a question for you that was pretty much in 3 parts. I'll make it as quick as I can. I'm looking to use my computer for this, and first I would like to know, which operating system would you suggest? Windows, Ubuntu, or using something like a Mac Mini for this sort of app, for this sort of thing?
I would say Windows still has the upper hand because of Media Center. The Windows Media Center is really a very slick way to watch stuff. You do either have to buy a Media Center PC that has the correct video capture card and all of that. Oh, I guess you're getting. Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. Let me step back. You're not going to have any signal at all, or are you going to have antenna signal?
I am going to have an antenna signal because unfortunately, I was one of those guys that thought, oh yeah, I'll never need a digital converter box, and I didn't buy one.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So your only source of TV is the internet or an antenna?
Internet or antenna, okay. Yes, sir.
So you'll either get a PC that has, antenna input and a capture card, which I would recommend,
Okay.
And the nice thing is you no longer have to do cable card or any of this decoding. You're going to get free, unencoded, over-the-air high def, very good high def, if you've got a good signal in was it Oak
Lawn.
Oak Lawn.
604.
Yeah, you're pretty close. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to get all the metros. I think another good way to go, but it's going to take maybe a little bit more customization, is the new Mac Mini. Now, the good news is new Mac Mini has HDMI out.
Okay.
They don't come with Blu-ray players, though, so if Blu-ray is an issue, is something you want, then the PC might be a better choice. Also, you'll have to get a video capture device for that Mac Mini. The iTV from Elgato is a very good one. That'll let you get over-the-air signals, and then you can also, and I would recommend customizing the Mac with something like Plex or XBMC. These are programs designed to turn a OS 10 system into a media system.
And the thing is, Leo, I actually have an HP Pavilion that has XP Media Center installed on it, and I was thinking of if I should just use that for these purposes and then eventually upgrade to a new computer.
Yeah, you already got one. Why not try it? Does it have a video capture card in it?
It does not. It does not.
I wouldn't spend a lot of money on an old PC running XP because you're throwing money after down a hole at this point.
Right. And is it able to do some sort of DVR?
Yeah, that's what Media Center does. So Media Center has a number of capabilities. One, it's got a very nice user interface that can be used with a remote control. The industry talks about the lean forward and sit back experience. A living room television is a sit back experience. The computer's a lean forward experience. If you want to watch TV on your big screen TV, you need to somehow make the computer interface more of a lean back interface, one that you don't have to lean over a keyboard and use a mouse for. And that's what both XBMC Plex on the Mac side or Media Center on the Windows side will do. They put big text up on the screen. You can use a remote control to navigate. You could play all your music. You could do slideshows. You can look at stored video. You can watch DVDs. And yes, it has a DVR capability. So that's where you need the video capture card. That's so that you can plug your HD TV antenna into it. It's got a tuner. And you could set the operating system to record. By the way, this is pretty much the same on Mac and Windows if you get the right hardware and software combination. You could set it to record, and just like a DVR.
Oh wow! Now that's great. Yeah, because I was one of my other questions was going to be what type of converter box would you suggest that's actually left, but
you don't need one. The PC becomes your converter box.
That's great.
Now, the negative, I think the simplest thing is a home theater PC running Windows Media Center. That's just out of the box going to work, but it's not. I mean, and actually I defer to the chat room on this because I haven't done it, but my sense is a lot of what you want to watch is going to be over the internet, whether it's stuff you download, whether you're going to get it from iTunes, or you're going to get Hulu, for instance. The ability to watch Hulu, especially now that there's Hulu Plus, is going to be a big part of that, right? Because Hulu has a lot of shows on it. And the question is, how easy is it to get the Media Center software, MCE, working with these other sources? It's really great for over-the-air TV or cable TV, but how easy is it to convert to get it from other sources? And, the hacks that are available for, say, the Macintosh are designed around that, Boxy and so forth. So,
okay.
this is Boxy for Windows would be probably a pretty good choice. This is really the question of how much of a hobbyist, how into this do you want to get?
Well, I really like tinkering with PCs. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert, but I can move my way around a motherboard. So I can.
Yeah.
I think
so, but it's not so much whether you know how. It's how much time you want to spend tinkering it. There are people, friends of mine, who have spent a lot of energy cobbling together amazing home media systems, but it takes hours of finding the right software, and this is a hobby for them. If you're willing to make it that, then I think you have a lot of great choices. If you just want it out of the box working, I think Windows Home Media, Windows Home Theater PC would be a great choice. And I would get a new one running Windows 7 with the latest capture card. They're not very expensive, and it'd really be done,
Yeah. Well, no, I really appreciate your advice. And if I could just say one last thing.
Sure.
The lighting in your studio looks totally different.
It's going to look really different on Monday.
Do you remember that caller that called in?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a weird caller. That's all he had to say was, I don't like the lighting. I don't understand what he was talking about. But it does look different all the time because we're moving lights around. You know, for people who don't know, who's saying, but wait a minute, this is a radio show. It is. Yeah. But ever since I started doing these podcasts, I turned on these cameras, and now we basically have built a television studio in the radio studio. So now it's both radio and TV, and you can watch live video at live.twit.tv if you want to see my ugly mug as I gesticulate. Well lit, too.
Leo.
Thank you, Clint.
Yeah, thank you, and keep up the good work. I'll be listening to you probably until the day I die.
Oh, well, I bless you. Or more likely the day I die. It sounds like you're a younger man than I am. Thank you, Clint. Take care. How morbid is that? How morbid can you get? We're going to get back to the phones in just a second, but my good buddy is here, and actually this is very timely. The GizWiz, Dick D. Bartolo, writer.
Founder.
I just put you in charge of Mad Magazine. You don't mind that, do you?
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm sure Bill Gaines wouldn't mind that you founded Mad Magazine.
Gaines wouldn't mind. I don't know how Time Warner feels about it. That'd be perfect. Gaines would think it was super.
He is Mad's maddest writer, the GizWiz, and he does a daily podcast with me called The Daily GizWiz. It's all about gadgets, and you have what I think many consider the hottest phone out there, and it ain't an iPhone 4.
It ain't. It's the Droid X. It'll be out officially July 15th. But they had their press conference I can't remember if it was the day before or the day that the iPhone 4 went on sale.
The day before they had it, and there was an interesting, and people are very, this is running the Google Android operating system.
Exactly, which I'm beginning to love. Leo, what knocks me out, and you have what do you have, the Nexus One?
I have the Nexus One. I do too. I love Android.
I love Swipe.
Yeah. So this comes with a third-party keyboard called SWYPE that instead of tapping out each letter as you do on the iPhone and a normal Android device, you slide your finger along the keyboard. You like that?
You know what? I like it because I was up at ABC News, and one of the guys up there has Swipe on his phone. I said, how does this work? And he said, well, you want to spell the word fantastic? You just spell it out with your finger. So I do this, and I'm thinking, how could the phone possibly know what the hell this is? And I look up, and it says fantastic, and I do amazing. It goes, I don't know how it doesn't know to use the letters that you drew a line through to go over, but it works really well. Now,
I have to say, I love it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, is yours a 4.3-inch screen also?
No, and so that's one thing the Droid X has is a 4.3-inch screen. The other Android phones, the Evo has 4.3, but the Nexus One is, I think, 3.8. It's smaller. And I think that larger screen makes a big difference. It's, I believe, the same resolution. It's just a bigger screen.
Yeah, the videos on it looks really great. It has everything else that all the phones current, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and GPS, and I didn't know about DLNA, but you must know about that.
Yeah. It has all the buzzword. We call it buzzword compliant.
Oh yeah, mine is buzzword plus.
Now this is a follow-on? No, because I think there is a Droid 2 that is the follow-on for the original Droid on the Verizon system.
The Droid 2 is next, I believe.
This is something new and different. The Droid X.
Exactly. This one has no keyboard. The Droid 2, I believe, is going to have the slide-out keyboard like the original Droid has. But I've seen a little bit on that. They're going to leave out there. There was this big four-way arrow key that was on the same platform.
This is a little right. Doesn't have that kind of cursor.
Yeah, it's a bigger keyboard. So the Droid 2 have a bigger keyboard.
The Droid's bigger because of that 4.3-inch screen. Do you find it too big?
You know what? I wear everything on my belt. I don't put anything in my pocket. So I just got a slightly bigger case to wear this on my belt, so it doesn't bother me. What I love about it is like on a subway or something, if the train is going really slow and you want to watch a movie, this is really a beautiful screen. 4.3 is big.
It's a little higher resolution than the Evo. It's 854 by 480. Now, that's a little bit lower than the iPhone 4. The iPhone 4 is 960 by 640.
And it weighs a touch more than the iPhone. The iPhone, I think, is 4.8 ounces, and this is 5.5.
You can use it as a mobile hotspot, which I find interesting.
Yes, you can. But the same thing as other phones, but it's another $20 a month to do that. But up to 5 people can get it. Can use it. It comes with a built-in 16 gigabyte micro SD card,
which you could increase if you wanted to, but 16 is pretty big. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You can take the new 32 gigabyte cards.
Now, this is running a customized version of the Android operating system. It's got the Motorola Blur interface on it.
Yes,
what do you think of that? Do you like that?
You know what? I don't mind it because anything I didn't like on the screen, you know, with the Android system, everything that was on the screen and I just dragged to the garbage pail. So
you customize. It's very customizable. In fact, more so than the iPhone, really. Don't you like the widgets? This is one thing I love about Android. There's 2 things I think Android does better than the iPhone. One is those widgets. You can have a nice big clock or weather forecast or whatever. I love that.
Yes. And also, I let people go, oh, well, you know, you don't have the amount of apps that the iPhone has.
58,000 apps. Come on.
It's up now, Leo. It's now 65,000.
That's plenty.
So, yeah, I know.
How many apps does one need?
Well, I'm only using 7,950. I had to add 9 more screens.
I do have to say, the other thing that I mentioned, there are 2 things that Android does better. The other one is notifications. I don't know if you've noticed, but at the top of the window, you get notifications for texts received, emails received, updates to applications. You can drag that down, and it lists them all. The iPhone, you can only see the most recent one. This shows them all. It's I think the notification system on Android is very intuitive, very easy to use, and much more effective. Oh, there's a third thing. Have you noticed this? You can dictate anywhere.
You know what? I just read about that yesterday, and I haven't tried it yet.
It's
and the
very
other
good.
Thing is, you know, you sign on when you first get the phone with your Google account, and I'm thinking, oh, you know, I have to put in the phone number, and then I look at the thing; it has everything's in there already. It just picked it up from my Google.
Dick DiBartolo is the GizWiz. You can catch his website, gizwiz.biz, GIZWIZ.biz, and he's got a great contest where you can win Mad Magazines called What the Heck Is It? And, of course, he joins us every day, Monday through Friday, for the Daily GizWiz podcast. And every week right here on the radio show. Dick, thanks for filling us in on that. I think this is important to point out. If you don't like what's going on with the iPhone 4, there are plenty of other good choices, and this new Droid X is one of them. Thank you, Dick.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. I am Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy. We'll see you next time. Have a great geek week. Bye-bye. Well, a good day to you. Leo Laporte here, the Tech Guy. And I'm ready to talk tech. Yes, I am. At 8888 Ask Leo. This is the show where we talk about all those doohickeys and devices in your life, the ones with the chips in them. Whether it's a personal computer or a Bluetooth earpiece, it's a cell phone or a camcorder and a high-def digital camera, even a high-def television. This is the show for that. In fact, we do talk home theater in about half an hour with Scott Wilkinson. He'll be stopping in. Anything you want to talk about in those realms, I would love to talk with you. All you have to do is dial the phone. 8888 Ask Leo is my number. That's 888-827-5536. Toll free, 888-827-5536. Now, if you're in the U.S., that's toll free. If you're outside of the U.S., well, it's not. But here's the good news. You can use Skype and call that number, and it costs you nothing. Because Skype out, very nicely, is free for toll-free numbers. So you see how that works. All you got to do is enter +1 888-827-5536. Now, I have to tell you, there's probably not many talk shows in the U.S. of A. that say, and for our international listeners, but this one is international. But because of the Internet. We do have stations in Canada, but also because of the Internet. We have listeners to our stations, the 111 stations in the U.S. that carry it on their Internet streams. We also have about, I think it's between 50 and 75,000 podcast listeners who listen to the show after the fact. And about 30% of them are outside the U.S. So all over the world, people want to know more about tech. And sometimes I think they must be watching the U.S. and just with bafflement and befuddlement as the tech giants battle it out. You know, the battle between Apple and Google and Microsoft, and it's so silly. But I like the battle. I celebrate the battle not only because it makes good material for the show, and it certainly does that, but more importantly, when these companies fight it out like that, it's usually good for consumers. I'll give you an example. The cell phone world. The fact that Google got into... Google. Did you see a Hot Tub Time Machine? Where they changed the future slightly by traveling back in the past, and Google ends up being named Lugal? Because Lou starts it. I'm going to call it Lugal from now on. Lugal, of course, decided to get into the smartphone business, much to Apple's chagrin. Steve Jobs even very famously said, hey, we didn't get into search. Why did Google get into our business? Apple wanted a monopoly with the iPhone. Well, it's not a monopoly. In fact, despite appearances, the iPhone isn't the best-selling smartphone out there. It's not. It's outsold by BlackBerries. And I have a feeling if you look at the total number of Android installations out there, it's outsold by Android as well. Not by any one Android handset. Not by the Sprint Evo or the Verizon Incredible or the... well, AT&T has... what do they have on an Android? Do they have an Android phone? The Hero, is that Android? It's outsold by them as a group, though, by all the phones running the Google operating system. And that's really what counts, right? Because if you're a developer, if you're writing software, you don't look at individual manufacturers mostly. You look at the operating system. You don't write for Dell, you write for Windows. You don't write for the Evo, you write for Android. Google announced a couple of weeks ago with the Droid X announcement, that's the new Verizon Droid, which looks really sweet, that they were getting 160,000 installs a day and new Android activations every day. It's almost 5 million handsets a month. So yes, they're outselling the iPhone. 5 million a month. That's great news. Not because I'm rooting for any one horse in this race, but because that competition's good for us. It means that each side will strive harder to make a better phone. Apple's iPhone 4 is out. We talked about it last week. I gave you my first impressions. I've had it now for a week and a couple of days. And I'm still using it full-time as my phone. I will do so for another few weeks before I decide whether to go back to Android or to stick with the iPhone. I think the iPhone's leading right now for a couple of reasons. It's a beautiful screen. That Retina display that they talk about, it's true. It is easily the highest resolution display I've ever seen on any device. And it looks rock solid. It looks like you're reading paper when you're reading something. Now, not all applications have out of the box support it. So it's you can't immediately see the benefit on some older applications, most older applications, but you could sure see the benefit on something like Apple's iBooks, which is updated, of course, to work with it, and the text on that is just so crisp and legible. It's like you're reading paper. You wouldn't think a small screen like this reading would be any good, but it is. It's easy. It's wonderful. Giving the Kindle a run for its money, frankly. And I have to say, there's some promise with things like FaceTime, although, even though I did a bunch of FaceTime calls when I first got the iPhone 4, that's that video calling feature. It has a front-facing camera, and you can call another iPhone 4 if you're using Wi-Fi. And all of those ifs mean that there's really hardly anybody I can call. So I haven't used the FaceTime. I'd be curious, though, if you're using it and if what you think of it. I made a few calls, and it works. I think it's really the screen that makes the iPhone a winner. Now, what's negative? Well, we talked yesterday at length about the antenna issue. And there's no doubt this is real. Notice I have my iPhone in a case, a plastic case. I went to the AT&T store. I said, help. Every time I hold my iPhone in my left hand, bridging that antenna, I lose all my bars. The AT&T guy said what Apple's been saying. Apple put out a press release on Friday that said, he said, okay, yes, the bars are going down, but do you notice dropped calls? And I had to tell the truth. I said, well, no, actually. I don't make many calls with the phone, but I haven't had any dropped calls. Apple's position is, we've made this antenna the best ever. And independent results at Anand and other places. It's a very good review, by the way, if you go to the Anand Tech, ANANDTECH.com. I'll put a link to it in our show notes at techguylabs.com so you can read it if you're curious. But Anand and others have said, no, you know what? It does seem to be a better antenna and fewer dropped calls, even though you can absolutely, if you handle the phone in a certain way, you can cause those bars to go from 5 to 0. Apple says, and this is an interesting revelation, well, ever since the first iPhone came out, we've been doing it wrong. We've been overestimating by as many as 2 bars the amount of reception you're getting. Wait a minute. What? Say that again? We've been saying you have more bars than you really have. So we're going to fix that, and we're going to put out a release to the iPhone that will actually show the actual number of bars. So instead of going from 5 bars to 0, you'll go from 2 bars to 0. And we're going to make bars 1, 2, and 3 bigger. So shut up and enjoy the iPhone. That's basically what Apple's saying. Stop bugging us. Already there are a couple of class action lawsuits. Now, I've talked to a number of antenna engineers. We had a good one on our podcast TWiT yesterday. Spencer Webb of AntennaSys.com. He's done a lot of testing. And he also has come to the conclusion this is a better antenna. He says all cell phones, now that the antennas in the body of the phone, are going to have some problem with being handled improperly. If you hold them in a certain way, you're going to get some attenuation. The antenna is going to get weaker. Just depends where you hold it. And he says this is not unusual. He said it might have been a difficult thing for Apple to fix. He says it's not the... As some have said, your hand short-circuiting this little, they have a little black insulator at the bottom left of the iPhone. He says it's not that. He says it's just your big fat hand blocking the antenna. And he says the only way to fix it is to put something bigger and fatter in between your hand and the antenna, like a case. And the bigger the case, the less you'll impede the antenna. But the real question, and the question I have to ask you, and the question Apple's asking is, do you have more dropped calls? And it seems to be, the consensus seems to be no. So here's the real question. Is this a problem? Yes, it's a problem. Because already people think AT&T's terrible, and now the iPhone, you can see, but just by holding it in your left hand, just as Steve Jobs did at his keynote, just as all the Apple ads do, all of the Apple ads show a hand holding it exactly as you're not supposed to. If you hold it that way, you're going to see those bars go down. And yeah, maybe it doesn't drop a call. And I had to try this, by the way. After I went to the AT&T store, I said, well, really? So I went home and I made a call, and then I held it and I watched the bars go down, and the call did not go away. So I proved to myself that if I have sufficient signal, that phone's going to be all right, regardless of what the bars say. So we should be ignoring the bars, is what Apple's saying. In fact, my friend Jerry Pornell, the great science fiction writer, said, well, why do they even put bars? Why don't they just put a light that says, yes, you have reception, no, you don't? Because that's really what it is on a digital phone. It either works or it doesn't. It doesn't degrade. It doesn't get worse. It either works or it doesn't. That's digital, right? You either get enough bits to make a phone call, or you get not enough bits to make a phone call, and that's the choice. It's binary. So he says, rightly, you should just put an on-off light on the phone that says you got a signal or you don't. You've got enough juice to do it or you don't. The problem is really a marketing issue. People want bars. And they want those bars to be big. And Apple apparently has been kind of misleading us as to how many bars we've got. Let's go to the phones. 8888 Ask Leo. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. I'd love to get impressions from people of the new iPhone. I have to say, despite the antenna issues, and putting it in a case, by the way, completely fixes these as far as I can tell. I love it. And I didn't mention the other thing I really like about the new iPhone. This camera, this 5-megapixel camera, is easily the best camera in a phone. Now, it's not, it's not going to replace your digital point-and-shoot. Not so much because of quality. I think the quality is actually very close to a digital point-and-shoot. It's not going to replace it because of the lack of controls. You can't zoom. well, I guess you could digitally zoom, but that's not the same. You have limited ability to focus on a certain point. You have to tap the screen. You have limited ability to adjust the lighting and so forth. It's a relatively inflexible camera, but boy, it looks good. And the high-def video, while not quite as good as a flip, is pretty close. So it's a great little camera in your pocket. The truth is, the iPhone is a great small computer. Not such a great phone. It's been that way since day one. I haven't had more dropped calls. I think Apple has fixed that despite the antenna issues. It's a very impressive phone. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you about your experiences with that. 8888 Ask Leo. There have been other small issues. Apple has acknowledged an issue with the proximity sensor. This is something very clever Apple did with the very first iPhone. If you think about it, when you got a big touch screen like that and you take a call and you hold it up to your head, you've got to somehow disable the screen. Otherwise, your cheek is going to dial a phone number. And when I first got the iPhone, this happened to me a number of times. I heard touch tones. Once I muted a call, it turned out the proximity sensor just wasn't doing its job. And I'd put the phone up to my cheek, and my cheek would be, well, of course, it's because I have such dynamic, jutting cheekbones. No, it's actually I have a face like a potato. However, it's still dialed the phone for me. So Apple has acknowledged that. And they are, in some cases, giving you replacements. I tried to duplicate it yesterday, and it's stopped. So, the proximity sensor, I think, is just a little light sensor. And if you put the wrong case on it, for instance, you can block it. Maybe mine was smudged. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't working properly. Maybe it's fixed now. Do expect an update in software from Apple to at least make the bars bigger. You're hoping that will cure the complaints. And there's at least one. I think there's a number of class action lawsuits against Apple over this iPhone. But I'd like to know your experience, good or bad. And if you think there's a better phone out there, do you prefer the Sprint Evo? Do you like the Incredible? Both are excellent phones. I'm still a Nexus 1 fan. I still love the Nexus 1. Those of you who have Google's Nexus 1 will be happy to know that they've been pushing out the update to the latest version of the Google operating system. One advantage of having this Google phone is you get the updates first, and they're now out to 2.2. They call it Froyo because they like desserts. And it's faster, better, has some nice new features. It's very nice. And I did get that pushed out to my T-Mobile Nexus 1 on Friday, so that's good news. This Droid X, we got a review yesterday from our gadget guru, Dick DiBartolo, the GizWiz. He loves it. 4.3-inch screen. Not as high resolution as the Apple screen, but a beautiful screen. Great camera. This is a great phone, too. This is a good time to be getting a cell phone, a smartphone. Good time to get a smartphone. I'd also like to hear from you what cases you recommend for the iPhone 4. It seems such a shame to put a case on such a work of art. It really is a beautiful design, the glass in the front and the back. But I have some concerns about the fragility of the glass in the back, to be honest. It's not as tough, apparently, as the glass in the front. And, of course, a case protects you from that antenna droppage. Whether that cuts calls off or not, I don't know. It seems to me that it's got to affect them if you're in a marginal area at least. So it seems better to have a little bit of a case on that thing. I picked one up at the AT&T store. They didn't have very many choices. I kind of like it. It's a purple case. It's from iFrogs. And you do have to get one that's just for the iPhone 4 because you have to make room for the flash. The buttons are a little different. You have to open up a little hole for the second microphone on top of the device, things like that. So you do have to go out and get a new case if you have an iPhone 3GS or 3 or the original iPhone. You're going to have to get a new case. Connector's the same, though. In fact, I've been able to use my Fast Track to charge the iPhone, even though it doesn't fit quite as beautifully. So recommendations, we can help each other out. This iFrog's case, it's pretty good. I'd like to know what else. We have a chat room where you can go to if you want to participate, and we have show notes online at techguylabs.com. You can go there and see what we talk about and add your thoughts to the chat room. It's linked there off techguylabs.com. Let's go to our first call of the day. Becky is in Healdsburg, California, just up the road a piece. Hi, Becky. Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy.
Hi, Leo. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks. Happy 4th of July.
Thank you, and to you too.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll see lots of good fireworks
I
tonight.
think Healdsburg has some nice ones. I might go up your way.
Cool. Come on up. We'd love to have you. I've got a question that's so appropriate that you're talking cell phones right now, because I just changed over from a Palm Trio to a Motorola Droid.
How do you like it?
And I'm loving it. I love the applications. I'm having fun downloading things. And
85,000 applications now on Android. I think that's a lot of applications. They're really rivaling the, I mean, admittedly, Apple has 250,000, but 85,000 is a lot.
It is. I'll never get it. I'll never be able to go through them all.
There's plenty. I hear the magic sound. Hang on, Becky. We're going to talk about your Droid, and I'll help you out with it a little bit, too. You're looking for a good calendar app, I know. Stay tuned. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Right now, Becky's on the line from Healdsburg, California, with her new Droid, replacing a Palm, a Trio. How do you find that keyboard, Becky? Is it as good as the Trios was?
Well, the one thing about the Trio, it was small enough to where I could use one hand to make my entry. With the Droid, it's more spread out, and I need to use 2 fingers. I might be able to eventually get to 1, but my hand's just not big enough to do that.
Oh. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think I like the one-handed typing, and the Droid you can't do it. I also find the keyboard is a little hard because the keys are not as differentiated as they were on the BlackBerry or the Trio. So it's kind of hard to know what you're typing. You really have to look at that keyboard. But what can I do to help you with your Droid? I'm glad you like it. I agree. I think these Android phones are really, really good.
Oh, it is. It's great. And I needed to go with this because I have Verizon. I kept hearing the rumors of iPhone coming over to Verizon, but I just got tired of waiting.
It won't be till January at the earliest.
Oh, okay. I kept hearing June of this year, and then that June went.
I had hoped and prayed. In fact, I thought maybe Steve would announce it in June at the Worldwide Developers Conference, but he let me down.
Darn it all.
Darn him all. But I think, and by the way, the new Droid 2 and Droid X, also on Verizon, look incredible. The Incredible on Verizon is incredible. These are great Android handsets.
Exactly. Yeah. I love them. But I did go with the Motorola because of the physical keyboard. I wanted that. So I'm glad I still have that. But my question is, coming from the Trio, I have appointments that I have every other week. And it was wonderful. I was able to put that in. I didn't even think about double-checking the Droid before I got it. And you cannot put in an appointment every 2 weeks.
You want a repeating 2-week appointment?
Yes.
Now, the Droid calendar is based on the Google Calendar. In other words, it syncs with calendar.google.com.
Right.
So I haven't tried doing this custom thing. I believe you can on the Droid even, but I know you can do it on Google Calendar. So worst case, you could log into your Google Calendar. Do you have a Google Calendar set up?
No, I don't.
Okay. So worst case, you can set up a custom repeat on the Google Calendar that will have it repeat as you would like it to repeat, I believe. Let's see. Daily, every weekday, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, every Tuesday and Thursday, weekly, monthly, yearly.
That's exactly what I see.
So you want every second Tuesday.
Right.
Well, I was pretty sure you could do this. I know I do weekly, Monday.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, here's what you do. You go to weekly.
Okay.
And you'll see in weekly it's going to give you, this is not, by the way, the ideal setup. But on weekly it's going to give you repeat on check boxes, and you could check Monday, or you want it every Tuesday and Thursday. You could check Tuesdays and Thursday, and it's going to give you weekly on Tuesday and Thursday. Repeat every 1 week. You could have it on every second Tuesday and Thursday, every third Tuesday. You can. It's as flexible as you want it to be. But you have to find that in the weekly repeat. So it's not immediately obvious. You can do the same thing with months. You know, you can have it every 6 months on the third day of the month or the third week of the month, and so forth. So it is flexible enough to do that. But it's hidden a little bit.
Okay.
So now I'm looking at Google Calendar and seeing that. I would think it'd be repeated in Android as well. I don't have my Android phone in front of you, but I suspect it would on the phone as well. But if not, you could do it in the Google Calendar. And I do recommend, if you're going to use an Android phone, that you set up your Google Calendar. And in fact, Google Voice is open now to all and makes a great voicemail system for Android. You can have it use that instead of the Verizon voicemail system, so you get texts and email when you get a message, things like that. There's some very nice features Google provides for Android phone users, as well as everybody else.
Right, I'm using their visual voicemail.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I have to say, they've done a nice job. That's a takeoff a little bit on Apple's visual voicemail. But,
okay.
Yeah, but you take a look at the Google Voice as well. But anyway, this calendar, you go to weekly, and then you can say every Tuesday and Thursday of the week.
Okay, I'll give that a try.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you so much. Have a great 4th.
Great 4th. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Scott Wilkinson is here. He is our home theater guru from the Ultimate AV Magazine at ultimateavmag.com. He's also a columnist at Home Theater Magazine and joins us every week to talk home theater. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Leo. Happy 4th to you.
Happy 4th of July. You going to go see some fireworks?
You betcha.
Where do you go?
Burbank's got a nice display,
Awesome.
So we're looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and you're back from New York. You went to the Consumer Electronics Association mini meeting.
Mini line show. Yeah, it's called a CEA line shows, a sort of a micro CES. Very interesting. Had a lot of good stuff happen there, which we talked about some last week.
Did you get a chance to watch the World Cup in 3D at all?
I did.
What do you think?
I have to say I was, shall I say, underwhelmed.
Because we talked a little bit about this last week, but I want to make sure people hear this, because that's kind of what people are saying is the selling point, right? Of 3D as well. Maybe you don't want to see movies, but wait till you see sports.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to get better. I think that the people who are creating 3D right now are just at the beginning of the learning curve.
Maybe.
And as they learn how to shoot 3D better, what camera angles to use, what kind of zoom settings to use, all that kind of stuff, it's going to get better and better.
Good.
We're just at the very beginning stages here. And the long shots, the wide and long shots of the entire stadium tend to look a little strange. And there's more stuttering and motion blur in fast stuff, which you're going to see a lot of in sports. So they really need to work on that problem, which I think is due, at least in part, to the fact that when they're sending the right eye and left eye, they're actually cutting the resolution for each eye in half, because they have to fit the signal in the same bandwidth, in the same broadcast infrastructure that they used to send 2D. But now they have to send 2 images in the space of 1. So what do? They cut the resolution in half. In most cases, it's the horizontal resolution, yes. They send it in a format which is called side-by-side. So they take the left eye image and they put it in the left half of the frame, and they take the right eye image and they put it in the right half of the frame. And then they transmit it. It doesn't use any more bandwidth than a 2D image. And when it gets to your TV has to do something called unpack it. And then what it has to do is fill in the missing pixels. Because each original eye, the image for each original eye, was full 1920 by 1080, and then when they packed it, they had to throw out half that resolution in order to send it. So it's still a work in progress, I have to say, and I'm much happier with Blu-ray 3D because it's full 1080p, 1920 by 1080 for each eye, which they can't do in a broadcast situation. So this is all a very fluid, evolving situation, and I'm certainly looking forward to covering it and continuing to watch it because I think it is going to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do. I'm convinced of that.
Well, they're putting all their money and you know, they're betting on it.
They're betting on it big time.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
I figure anything that many people put that much money into, even if nobody wants it, at least it'll be around for a little while.
Yeah, yeah. I think that some people complain. They say, "Oh, 3D is just a way for studios to charge more money at the box office, and a way for hardware manufacturers to get people to buy new TVs and new Blu-ray players." Yes, that's all true. Mm-hmm. I won't deny any of that. However, I will also say that I think 3D can add significant value. That there is something there that you don't get in 2D, and that's how I feel about it.
Well, if that's how you feel about it, that's how I feel about it. You're the expert, Scott. So you got some questions from viewers?
I do. Tons, actually.
Great.
One of them, I wanted to address. A couple of people have written me about the podcast that I do on the TWiT network called Home Theater Geeks. And as I say at the top of each show, for those of you watching the live stream, and I've gotten several requests saying, how do I do that?
Well, that's a good question. How do they do that?
How do they do that? Well, it's very easy. We record the podcast on Mondays from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're at a computer at that time and, your boss isn't looking over your shoulder, you can tune in to live.twit.tv from 1:30 to 2:30 Pacific time on Mondays and watch us record.
Now, I'm not there, but Scott has great guests, and it's a really you get a whole hour, so you can take some time and really delve into these subjects, and I think that's great.
And I get some really interesting guests. You're exactly right about that. People who are real heavyweights, technical heavyweights, real geeks.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of the question is you also say you can submit questions to your list, to your guest geeks, and how do we do that? And that's also very easy, and it's really a fun part of the podcast, which we've just started to do, which is all you have to do is join the chat room. If you're watching at live.twit.tv, there's a chat room there, or you can sign on to irc.twit.tv, submit a question, and I'll pass it on to the guest.
Every Monday, go to twit.tv/HTG for more information. And Scott Wilkinson, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Mark, Australia. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, very appropriate with the carbonite ad there. I'm actually calling from Skype on my iPad. And
wait a minute. You're on your iPad and you're calling via Skype? Yeah. This sounds great.
Oh, I hope it is. Look, I've been listening for a while, and I finally decided to get something into the cloud. It's only my contact list. It's on Gmail, and it's syncing great to my N97. Excellent. All the birthdays, all my Facebook contacts, all of that's coming to my N97, no problem. The problem that I have is trying to sync the birthdays to the Mac address book. Are there any easy workarounds for it or not?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about Google is that you can have birthdays in the contact list, and the birthdays will show up as a special calendar in the Google Calendar. I suspect
sync to the calendar, yeah.
Yeah. So they should sync to iCal, so they'd at least show up in iCal. But let's see, is there any way to get it into the address book? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, because that's where I'm having the problem. I can't seem to get it on the calendars either. Maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you can.
Sure
so with which version of are you on a Macintosh?
Yeah, I'm on the Mac OS X.
I should make sure that when you say calendar, you're talking about iCal, and the address book, you're talking about Apple address book. So if you have the latest Snow Leopard, which you do, you can automatically sync your address book and calendar with your Google Calendar and address book. You can add a birthday to the template, and I think that's probably going to be the key. If you look at the templates available in the address book, there is a birthday field that you can add. And then when you do... Say again?
Sorry, I was going to say, should I be grabbing that from Gmail or...
Yeah, I would grab it from the contact list, right? Because that's what you wanted to do. And then if you grab it from the contact list, you should be able to sync it automatically in address book. Go to... Let me see. Where is the syncing in the address book? I know it syncs now with Google Calendar. I can't figure out where that is. I'm looking at an older version. I'm looking at Leopard, but I'm pretty sure in Snow Leopard you can sync your contacts, and it should automatically pick up that birthday. Let me look into it after the break. I'll see if I can find a way for you. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Mark was asking how he gets the birthdays out of his Google contacts into his address book on the Mac and his iCal on the Mac. And the beauty of using the Google tools is Google provides synchronizing tools. There's a lot of third-party synchronizing tools. I use an alternative calendar from a company called BusyMac called BusyCal that is a really great alternative to iCal that lets you pick up any of the fields in the Google Calendar. It's a sweet little calendar program. It's not free, unfortunately, but I think... And you might say, well, I have iCal. It's free. What do I need a third-party calendar on the Mac? But it has a lot of nice features, including a network sharing. It's great for a business because you can have multiple people access that calendar over the LAN as well as over Google. Has a lot of strong features. And, of course, one of the advantages of Google is if you have a birthday calendar, which is attached to your Google Contacts. You can subscribe to any calendar on Google. If you go into the calendar.google.com settings on an individual calendar, you'll see there's a subscribe feature, and as long as that calendar is public, you can subscribe to it, and it'll automatically appear in your calendar. So there's lots of ways to get that done. I'm pretty convinced you can get those birthdays in there. If somebody wants to call with a specific way to do it, I'd appreciate it. And it's great to have you listening in Australia, Mark. That's wonderful. We have listeners all over the world, even in beautiful Hawaii. That's where Ellie is. Hi, Ellie. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
Aloha, Leo. Happy Independence Day.
Well, how are the giant dolphins?
They're good.
Good. GiantDolphin.com is her website. Just
right.
Give you a little plug.
Right. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
I wanted to mention that I love what they did with the voiceover on the iPhone when they did the update, because you could do touch type or you can do double tapping. So you have your choice now.
So we should mention Ellie's blind and has been our expert on accessibility on the iPhone, and I know you love the iPhone. Are you talking about iOS 4 or iPhone 4?
Yes.
iOS 4. Okay.
Uh-huh. But even if you just do the software update from the 3GS, it's very good.
Excellent. I'm always glad to get that kind of feedback because, I don't know. I can't tell if it's good compared to what other choices there are out there, if it's usable. So I really appreciate your calling, Ellie, and letting us know. That's great.
And I also want to know, can you tell me the directions real quick? I know you're running out of time, about how you do the FaceTime?
Yeah, there's two ways to do FaceTime. First of all, you have to be on Wi-Fi. FaceTime is the video calling. Now, you also have to have an iPhone 4. You can't do this with...
I have one of those.
Good. You got the new iPhone. All right. Because it has a front-facing camera. If a person is in your contact list, there is a FaceTime button on the contact list. So you can place a FaceTime call directly by pressing that button in the contact list. It'll attempt to make a FaceTime call. So you'll see that, it has in the info, when you go to the info on the contact list, at the bottom where it had text message, it also has share contact, add to favorites, and there's now a button, FaceTime. It's the top right button underneath notes. When you push that button, it attempts to make a FaceTime call. Now, of course, if the person isn't available for a FaceTime call, it'll tell you. The other way you could do it is if you're on a call with somebody and they're on an iPhone 4, in the middle of the call, there's a FaceTime button where the dialer is and all that other stuff is, and you can press it and it will initiate a FaceTime call starting from a regular cell phone call. Now, Apple tells me that in both cases, it does not use cell phone minutes once you're in the FaceTime call. It's going to use the Wi-Fi and not the cell phone minutes, so it doesn't cost you anything to make a FaceTime call.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter about minutes anyway because it's mobile to mobile.
Good point. If you've got a mobile-to-mobile unlimited free calling, which I guess we all do.
Yeah. But I was just wondering, how do you initiate it?
There's two ways to do it. One from the contact book and one while you're in a call. Both cases, you'll see a FaceTime button and you press it.
Okay.
Are you interested in using it?
Yes, I am. I want to see how I can do with it.
Yeah.
Because I have some usable vision, so,
I think it's a cool feature, and I've done it with a few people, like my friend Robert Scoble, but it's very limited because the other person has to be on Wi-Fi and has to have an iPhone. It's not like you could be at the mall and say, hey, how do you like these shoes? You have to be somewhere where there's Wi-Fi, and everybody you're calling has to have an iPhone 4, and I think that just makes it very limited. Now, Apple says we're using standards so that presumably if Apple opens this up, people would be able to use Skype and other services that give you video calls. Then it would really be useful. You know what I'm hoping? Here's what I'm crossing my fingers. I'd like to see Google. Google has video calling using its Google Talk protocol. If you have a Google Talk account, that's their chat stuff. You can, just like with Yahoo and AIM and all these others, you can make a video call. What if Google put on its Android phones, and they could do it with a swipe of a pen practically, the ability to do video calls using Google Talk as the signaling, as the calling. That would open it up to a lot more people. Get Skype, Google Talk, AIM, and Yahoo involved, and then you'd be able to FaceTime a reasonable subset of your friends. Instead of just that one or two people who have an iPhone 4 and happen to be on Wi-Fi at this moment. Incidentally, the Sprint Evo, which also has a front-facing camera and runs the Google Android operating system, works on with problem is it's complicated to set up a video call. But if you can figure out how to do it, it will work on 3G as well as Wi-Fi. So Sprint has a little bit of an advantage in that regard. Great to talk to you, Ellie. Again, the site is giantdolphin.com. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get you to Israel and Long Beach. I will get to you next week. Be the first caller next week when we talk. You wanted to ask a question about the Nexus 1. I love talking about that, my favorite Google phone. But we are out of time today. Don't forget our website, techguylabs.com. will have links to all the things we talked about. And presumably, if Chris gets his Pocket Chris iPhone app into the store and approved by Apple, we'll have a link to that at some point as well. You could find downloadable audio versions of all of our shows. There's video, too. The video is kind of edited down because otherwise it would be a 6-hour download every week, and that seems like too much. So we cut it down to an hour or two. Also, links to the chat room, the message boards, and all of our other podcasts, too. It's all at techguylabs.com. I'm so glad you were here today. Let's do this again next week. What do you say? I'm Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy. Have a great geek week.